Good afternoon. Welcome to this beautiful day, beloved community. Look around and see one another. See this tremendously beautiful gathering of people who have come to remember and to honor Emily. Come and see the brilliance of this day with its many colors, and remember that we have come to celebrate someone who loved color. Come and settle into this space. I'm Gina Finicaro. I'm the interim Protestant chaplain here, and it is an honor to stand in this place and to move through this afternoon with you. Would you join me in a spirit of prayer, whatever that might mean to you, in whatever way you can gather your sense and yourself to be present in this place. Even as we invoke your name, O God, we know that your presence is already here, creating a safe, protective, and loving shelter for us to pour out our grief, to celebrate a life well lived, weave our spirits together, forming a beautiful tapestry that will at once warm us, comfort us, embrace us, and protect us. For we gather as a community that knew and loved Ellen Trespas. We gather conscious of those who have died and the frailty of our own existence on earth. We come to comfort and to support one another in common loss. We gather to hear words of love and remembrance that can drive away our despair and move us towards hope. We gather to commend to God with thanksgiving the life of Emily and our great honor in knowing her in the fullness of her life and years and love. Hear these words that come to us from Jesus, from the Gospel of Matthew. They are words of invitation and they are words of assurance. Come to me, all you who are weary and carrying heavy burden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am humble in heart and gentle, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So draw near today, gentle God, to console and strengthen this family especially. Give us the wisdom and the willingness to reach out to one another, for we can carry each other through the hardest of times with grace, with mercy, and love, that we might all find and achieve peace. May it be so. Amen. Throughout our time in this space today, you will hear some readings and some words, some familiar, some new to you, from beloveds in Emily's life. Our first reading comes to us from Emily's cousin, Eric, who will offer to us William Butler Yeats' poem, The Lake Isle of Innisfree. Eric?
I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, in a small cabin built there of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I'll arise and go now, for always night and day I hear the lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's gray, I hear it in the deep heart's core. Emily, I know you're in that peaceful place of Innisfree, and that brings me some comfort.
And now I want to invite up Peter, Jason, and Sarah and Tori to offer a poem by Henry Scott Holland called Death is Nothing at All.
Death is nothing at all. I have only slipped away into the next room. I am I, and you are you. Whatever we were to each other, that we still are. Call me by my old familiar name. Speak to me in the easy way which you always used. Put no difference in your tone. Wear no forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed, at the little jokes we shared together. Play, smile, think of me. Let my name ever be the household word that it ever was. Let it be spoken without effect, without the trace of shadow on it. Life means all that it ever meant. It is the same as it ever was. There is unbroken continuity. Why should I be out of sight? Out of mind, because I am out of sight. I am waiting for you, for an interval, somewhere very near, just around the corner. All is well.
You'll hear a smattering of remembrances this day. First, I want to welcome Peter to come up and start us.
In case anyone's wondering, the over-under on how far I can get on this is about 5 minutes. Hello to our friends, to our family, to those who have traveled far to get here, and to those who are afar and with us remotely. Thank you for coming. So after some futility over the past few weeks, I gave up trying to compose some profound words which would try and bring some meaning to Emily's death. This earthquake in our lives is still too inconceivable for me to fully comprehend. So rather than fumble through some trite observations on the human condition, I'm instead going to fumble through some rather simple personal anecdotes. Early in our relationship, Emily and I were talking about careers, how we got where we are, how we saw our careers unfolding, and I made the mistake of asking if she would ever consider taking a leave of absence from the academy and to teach at a local college or an art school. Well, she looked at me as if she had two heads and asked quizzically, "Why would I ever want to do that?" And that's exactly how she said, "Why would I ever want to do that?" She went on to say that she has the best job in the world. She gets to make art, she gets to teach art, she gets to develop a love of art in her students. And she was right. When your vocation and your avocation merge to become your life's purpose, you are very lucky indeed. And she knew that. Needless to say, I never brought that subject up again. Another situation came up later in her career. Emily had always looked up to the old guard amongst the faculty and staff. She respected their institutional knowledge, their commitment to the academy, and in recent years, in spite of still feeling young at heart, she had begun to feel the beginnings of some acceptance into that club. Clearly, she had always been respected, but after 20 years of teaching, she could feel her role evolving on campus, and she embraced that. That came into a little more focus a few years ago when Therese Zemlin's time as the art department chair was coming to a close. It was generally believed that the next department chair would either be Emily or Thayer. She told me that they were both being quite polite about these deliberations and the back and forth, but eventually they just decided to draw straws. Now, everyone here knows how that turned out. Thayer obviously drew the short straw and became department chair. Emily, at the time, thought she was getting a 6-year reprieve. Now, it's possible that that story is more apocryphal than strictly accurate, but she liked to tell it none the same. The last remembrance I'd like to relate are some words spoken to Emily by a close friend. We were overwhelmed with cards and letters, phone calls, flowers, food during her illness. And towards the end, Emily's ability to communicate became somewhat diminished, but she still understood her surroundings. This one colleague sent a video message, 4 or 5 minutes long, and she spoke directly to Emily. The message moved us both deeply, and Emily asked me to replay it for her numerous times. It was a private message, so I'm not going to attribute it, but I am going to quote it briefly. This colleague said, "There were years we were friends when I never told you how important you were to me. I assumed you always knew. But rather than assume, I'm going to tell you." She then said, "Emily, there's a divinity in you that is hard to explain. It's a special life force that makes others around you feel better about who we are and our place in the world. You reach deep inside and touch people in the most authentic place of our being, the seat of our dignity, self-worth, values, and love. You zoom right in and you lift us up with the levity, the play, and the creativity that you bring into our lives. Emily, there is a divinity in you." So beautifully said. Finally, in trying to make some sense of Emily's death, I find my feelings of loss, they seem to oscillate. Sometimes it's the day-to-day that I miss so deeply, while other times it's the bigger events, the gatherings, the birthdays, the celebratory moments. In our family, we will soon have an important graduation and a wedding or two, and it seems inconceivable that she will only be there in spirit and in our memories. Tori and Sarah, you know she wouldn't have missed these for the world. But you have to know that she will be present with us, just not in ways that we can fully grasp. During her illness, a lot of effort went into her care and treatment, so there wasn't really much opportunity for introspection on my part. Although we knew early on her condition was terminal, I didn't give a lot of thought to what life would be like without her. Now with her death, 4 months passed. That future has started to come more into focus. And while I will always have more wonderful memories than I deserve, I have to say that I'm finding the world to be less interesting and more gray and drab. Because in addition to everything else that she contributed, nobody could bring the color to our lives like Emily. Thank you all for being here to honor and celebrate Emily. I'm not a terribly spiritual person, but I feel her presence here today so strongly in each and every one of you.
Paula.
Thank you all for being here. I have 2 poems that I wrote. The first one I wrote about a month or so after Emily's diagnosis. The second one I wrote about a month after her passing. Beyond clouds, we live your life together. I teach you poems my mother taught me. You teach me how to endure your punk phase. You search for your other mother and father. We swim in Dinah's pond, play art, haunt thrift shops, eat turkey and stuffing, go to London, Amalfi, and Rome. Then you tell me you have cancer. You say, I wanted to be here for you. You say, I've had a good life, no regrets. You say, I have so much still to give, so much we don't say that might lay bare our raw edges. I walk the beach. A white moon floats in a pallid sky. A bank of heavy gray clouds rests above the horizon. Below them and above the horizon's razor edge is a portal filled with light. If I get desperate, Captain, take me there in the golden hour, in your silver boat, on the silvery path, or on the moon glade if the winds and tides favor, when the stars seem within reach, and let me slip through the portal into the land beyond. When no one is listening, pink glow through bare tree branches alerts me that the golden hour has arrived. It's just after 5, and soon rain taps on the window pane, a Morse code message, an SOS. I brush my teeth, the floorboards creak, when in the wood gnarled trees moan, a frog's guttural croak, a crow's distant caw. What should I do with my memories? My obsidian memories spill on the page. But what of the memories only you and I share? The sweet recollection of holding hands as the Boston Symphony plays Mahler's Fifth, walks on West Dennis Beach to Bass River, where Rosa rugosa swallow bees and golden heather smothers the moor. You hunting Easter eggs in the chilly morning in the backyard in your frilly yellow dress and rubber boots. Emily was a whirling dervish of creative energy, a painter in oil and watercolor. She was also a printmaker, a potter, a sculptor, a sewer, a jewelry maker, a bookmaker, a clothes designer, and textile maker. She had a keen eye for photography. I don't remember her making shoes, but who knows what her creative spirit would have conjured. She might have been an acquired taste for those uninitiated to her free-spirited personality, or taken aback by the occasional bawdy innuendo, or those attuned to a more conventional temperament. She once told me a colleague told her she was weird. She put hurt feelings aside and replied, "I hope in a good way." They should have known her as a teenager when a compliant barber at the Andover barbershop shaved a peace sign on her partially shaved head. Her students recognized Emily's good way. Her individuality and spirit of adventure were a welcome breath of fresh air. They appreciated her frankness, her wit, her distinctive fashion sense, her sage counsel, her honest approach to and identification with their teenaged angst. Rika Auguste Nelson, who is now an architect, sent me a poignant note saying in part, "Maybe that's the ultimate frustration of being a teenager. All those critical, painfully intimate aha moments turn out to be disappointingly prosaic parts of life. But even so, E.T. took each of us so seriously, and that's what let us loose in our art and in our lives." Spring couldn't come soon enough. Time to release her Honda scooter from its bonds of winter and don her ladybug helmet to motor downtown or from one end of campus to the other, or to dig in the earth and plant her vegetable garden or a lilac bush, or to hike an Avis footpath. She blazed a trail from her house with its Abbott blue shutters on Stonehenge Road to Watson Road, the route she took to her classroom, and which she adorned with fairy lights. Go there at dusk for that Tinkerbell experience. Thanks go to her neighbor, Mark Cutler, and to Nat Smith, who carved markers, Emily's Trail, painted the incised letters bright yellow, and attached them to trees at both ends of the trail. Emily loved family possessions and that she had rescued from relatives' houses being downsized or dismantled. And from garage sales and roadside finds to thrift shop detritus, she collected various ephemera, vintage greeting cards, letters, postcards, tickets, wallpapers, jewelry, books, photographs, and furnishings, many of which she used in her art. She was a bit of a magpie. To delve into her archive was like entering a museum marked by a free spirit eclecticism. A love of camping since childhood led to a fascination of vintage campers. Unearthing a 1967 Shasta camper with stylized turquoise stripes on the side, she parked it in the yard of Morton House and began a one-woman renovation and refurbishment project overlooked by the Siegfried children. When carpentry, lighting upgrades, painting, and installation of various new parts were done, she sewed curtains, slipcovers, and pillows, readying it to show off on its maiden voyage to New Hampshire. Her months-long confrontation with cancer showed the depth of her grit and bravery in the face of insurmountable odds and the inevitable. She told me she couldn't have endured without the unwavering love, support, and constant care and kindness of her husband, Peter, and his family, her family. Because COVID restrictions kept us apart until her last days, Emily and I enjoyed daily morning coffee together on FaceTime calls, exchanging texts, emails, and notes with artistic touches. She told me those precious moments brought us closer than we had ever been. When her father died, and when her feline companion of 20 years, Wookie, died in her arms last year, a little part of her heart died with them. Emily wasn't able to write the final chapter of her story, but those she did write had themes of the joy of living, the necessity of laughter, service to community, familial love, and dedication to a school and a job that gave her satisfaction and a true sense of worth.
We have a hymn, which I hope you'll find inside your program as an insert. Precious Lord, take my hand. I invite you to stand as you're able and to join in singing.
Lead me on, let me
I invite you to be seated.